Lesson 9, using sequence 07, motion and transform. For this one, we're going to be looking at motion, which we've already done a lot of so far in this chapter, but we're also going to use the transform effect, and we're going to compare one clip to the other in regards to them adding the transform effect to see how they differentiate. So most all of our stuff, here's our transform. So you're in your effects panel, distort, and transform. So this is the transform effect that they'll be talking about in the book. Okay, so let's look at this first clip here. When you click on it, you can see here's our motion. This should look real familiar. We've done this several times already in this chapter. It has positioning, scale. You also have your drop shadow applied. So we're going to go ahead and play this first one. Alright, so they added a shadow to this picture that's spinning. And as you see it, the shadow always stays on the front of his face and on the bottom as it rotates completely around. And by using just the motion, we've created that animation, which in some regards would work. However, they're saying by adding the transform effect, we can have more control over this drop shadow, and you can take lighting into account. So if you're trying to keep your shadow always on the bottom sides of your video and not have it when it rotates up, so right now you can see it's rotated up, and clearly we have light sources coming from up here and over here. This is not realistic to still have the shadow here. The shadow needs to move so it always stays down here even though the picture is rotating all the way around. So I know when you look at these it looks a little confusing, but notice that this one, it always stays in front of his face and always on the bottom. So I'm going to play the next one, and this next one has that transform effect. So notice now the shadow is always staying on the bottom side as it rotates. That means it's staying out of the light source, which is more realistic. However, I still think this is kind of a silly picture, but it's good for demonstration purposes. So as you can see, the shadow is always moving separately from the picture. So right now it's on the top of his head and on the back of him, whereas in the other clip we always saw it was always in front of his nose and always on the bottom of his shirt. So it moves independently, which gives it a more realistic feel. So let's click on this one here, and you can see there's your regular basic motion, and it has all the settings. And then you come down here, you have the transform. So they had drug this here onto the clip, and you get these settings, and then they've made adjustments here, so that gave you a little bit different control over that drop shadow. The reason it's affecting just the drop shadow and not this top image is because depending on how these effects are applied in your stack order here, they affect things differently. So it's only affecting the drop shadow, and then the motion, which is on the video, is staying separate. So they're having two separate rotations available. The more you do this, the more you'll understand that. I know at this time it's probably a lot to ingest. Okay, so we're going to click back to this one. As you can see, it just has the motion. It does not have, and you see the drop shadow, so it does not have that extra set of effect for transform. So that's what this one is talking about. It just wanted to show you you can have more control by double stacking your motion effect control, motion effects control that is in here with a transform effect. And this can work with other things as well. You just got to get more familiar with each of them. But it was a good demonstration to show how you could gain more realistic of the shadow always being on the bottom sides.